I'd like to call the Person County Board of County Commissioners meeting for March 21st to order at this time. Recognize that we do have a quorum. We'll proceed with our meeting. We'll ask Commissioner Sims to lead us in a invocation, and if you don't mind, Commissioner Gentry, lead us in our pledge afterward.
Well, bow your head, let's pray. If you would. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for allowing us to be here today. We ask that you would be with us, lead us and guide us as we go through our county commissioners meeting. We pray for those who are going through some difficult times. We pray for peace. We pray for those who are at war right now, and we just lift them up to you. Pray for friends and family who may be going through some difficult times, and we lift them up to you as well. Lead us and guide us as we go forth, and be with us as we leave here today. These things we pray in your heavenly name. Amen.
You will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on our agenda this morning is discussion and adjustment or approval of the agenda with a couple of changes there. We would like to request that closed session number 1 be taken off the agenda. And we would like to add a closed session for economic development discussion of matters related to location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the county. Any other discussion or changes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carried. First item on the agenda is proclamation for the week of the young child. I would like to read this. Do we have Kelly Fody here? She is? Okay, Kelly. I'm going to read this from here, but if you'd like to come up to the podium, I'll give this to you. Proclamation by the Person County Board of Commissioners on the week of the young child. Whereas the Person County Partnership for Children and other local organizations in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children are celebrating the week of the young child, April 2nd through 8th, 2022. And whereas by calling attention to the need for high quality early childhood services for all children and families within our communities and state, these groups hope to improve the quality and availability of such services. And whereas the future of Person County depends on the quality of the early childhood experiences provided to young children today. Now, therefore, the Person County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the week of April 2nd through 8th, 2022 as the week of the young child in Person County and urge all citizens to recognize and support the needs of young children in Person County. Adopted this 21st day of March, 2022, signed Gordon Powell and attested by Brenda Reeves. So thank you, Kelly. Give her a nice hand. Item number 2 on the agenda is request to add Copper Lane, a private roadway, to the database of roadway names for E911 dispatching. So we need a motion to go into a public hearing.
So moved.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we Ms. Saligon, if you will go ahead with your presentation, please.
morning, Commissioner.
Morning.
We have got a 65-acre tract that is subdivided into 5 lots, certified access easement, as required in the ordinance regulating addresses and road names in Person County. Any driveway serving 3 or more addressable structures must be named. In order to get ahead of that development down there, so we don't have to change people's addresses in the future, we would like to go ahead and name that road. The name that has been suggested by the property owners, one property owner, and approved by the remainder is Copper Shell Lane. And so we just recommend approval of the roadway name. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Have public comment?
No, sir, no one's signed up.
No one signed up. No further questions, anyone? Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Have a motion to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried.
Thank you.
And item number 3 would be action regarding this request. What is the pledge of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we add Copper Shell Lane to the private roadway that was just mentioned.
Have a motion to accept the request. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. At this time on our agenda for each meeting, we do have a period set aside for public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, we have one individual, Ms. Kathy Lawrence of Hurdle Mills.
Okay, Ms. Lawrence.
Hello, Commissioners. Good morning.
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 My name is Kathy Lawrence of 1034 Hurdle Mills. I'm sorry, Terry Road, Hurdle Mills. I'm here on behalf of myself and other concerned citizens. And I'm here to share with you how positively excited I am to know that you, our county commissioners, are looking into the emergency order signed in March 2020 by the then Commissioner Chair Ray Jeffers. We, the people, have come to understand that this order could be used to usurp our constitutional rights. Scary as that is, in fact, concerned Personians have voiced direct concern recently. It seems that there are those folks in our county that do not believe others should own guns, for instance. Although this right is guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. Further, these concerned residents of Person County have been threatened by law enforcement claiming to have the legal right to remove their firearms because of an emergency order. Wow, that seems like they may think that the emergency order usurps the Constitution. That's in conflict. However, we the people are awake. We're awake to the fact that the government ploy is in place to have any excuse to grab our guns and we know our Second Amendment rights. We also know that these executive orders are not law and are meant to fool us citizens into thinking they are. We also now know that this COVID-19 pandemic is really a plandemic. Let me be very clear about that, plandemic, meant to usher in the Great Reset. We do know this is conspired by government together with big business to usurp our rights and ultimately enslave us with the social scoring on our credit. If you're not yet aware of this fact, you may be getting your news from corrupt sources or even the government directly. Please work to learn the truth and crawl out from any rock that you may be hiding under and not aware of this. In fact, you don't have to be a scientist like myself to do this research. And to prove this is a hoax for your own self. With your own research, you can, for yourselves, discover that the government co-owns COVID vaccines. Pfizer clinical trial data from February 2021 proves that there's no justification for any approved vaccines. In fact, they're deadly and dangerous. And that the plan that originated, as known today as the Great Reset, originated in 1994 and is real And the World Economic Forum leader, Klaus Schwab, published a book on it. In fact, you can get it yourself off of Amazon. And in fact, we can take a ride to Georgia where they've carved it in stone. So I'm not making this up. That said, I am confident that you, our group of conservative commissioners, will rescind the Person County emergency order immediately and see it for what it is, a true power grab for those who seek to undermine our rights and take our guns and our rights away, submitting to their control. We realize this and we thank you for your action you're about to take.
Thank you. Item number 4 on the agenda is a motion to approve the consent agenda as included in your packet.
So moved.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Budget Amendment 15. Can you clarify that for me, Heidi? Just clarify the transfer of funds. It's a, no, I guess I want to question all the budget things that are going through because I have some concerns.
Okay, so the explanation on that one.
What page was that?
It is on 17 of the packet. There's the budget amendment.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. So what are we moving here?
I'm trying to look, I don't see a transfer.
So
We've
what's the
got-
amendment for then?
We've got some additional revenue that we've received from the Soil and Water District funds in
Okay.
there. There's a donation received for the Kirby and the sports complex, Sportsplex. Additional recreation fees have been received for the Sportsplex of $8,980. And we're distributing some COVID-related funds received in the Health Department for related expenditures of $540,941. And then there were some one-time Medicaid bonuses that the state has given for person industries for those employees providing direct services.
Okay.
And that bonus for those employees was $37,715.
Was this COVID-related funds? Any of this COVID-related funds?
The
or
ones for the
ARPA?
Health Department are,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried. New business, item number 5, great grant partnerships, Brightspeed and Charter Communications. Ms. Kathy.
Morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Looks different.
Okay, well, I am excited about this agenda item this morning, excited to share information with you about opportunities that we have to partner with 2 private providers to submit great grant applications to the state. The 2 providers are also joining us today. We have Mr. Steve Brewer here from Lumen Technologies, and you probably know them more commonly as CenturyLink as the service provider here locally. And then they are being bought out and becoming Brightspeed here in the near future. So when the application gets submitted to the state, it will be under the name Brightspeed. So you'll hear me refer to Brightspeed for the majority of the presentation. And then on Zoom, we have Justin Delancey from Charter Communications or Spectrum. So those are our 2 primary local providers, and they have both expressed an interest in partnering with the county to submit these applications to the state. So as you recall, we did receive approximately $7.5 million in ARP funds. The state has some money through federal dollars as well to be able to offer this great grant process. So GREAT is focused on growing broadband access within the rural areas of the state. So they have set up this competitive grant program. Let me go to the first slide that has our summary. Okay, there we go. They have set up this competitive grant program for private service providers to apply to. The deadline is April 4th. So any decisions that the county must make in order for these applications to proceed do need to be made today so that they can meet that deadline. Each grant application could be eligible for up to $4 million in grant awards from the state. And each county could potentially receive up to $8 million in grant funding through the GREAT Grant Program. So the way this works is the provider is going to put their money in, the state is going to award the grant, and then the county may also provide matching funds. With this competitive program, the state will score the applications that it receives. And part of that scoring is based on the match that the county is providing. And if we use our ARP dollars as the match, it will score higher. So that is what the providers are seeking today, is a commitment from the county to use some of our ARP dollars to match their grant applications. So we're going to give you the details of the plans that they have for Person County and what's involved in each of their applications. Okay, so our first proposal, and they have actually presented 3 options to us, is coming from Brightspeed. So I'm going to ask Steve to walk through the options that they have, and then we'll hear from Charter, and then I'll come back up and I will talk through the decision points for you, but we'll both be available here to answer any questions that you have. And I will mention, you do have the printed slides in front of you, so you can refer to the slides and the maps as they walk through their options.
Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Steve Brewer. I am Director of Governmental Affairs for Lumen. You may also know us as CenturyLink. And as was pointed out, we will be becoming Brightspeed here in the very near future. Pointing you to the last bullet point on the slide, about August 3rd of 2021, Apollo Global Management agreed to acquire Lumen's assets in 20 states, Lumen's local assets in 20 states, including the state of North Carolina. It's a $7.5 billion transaction. And as part of that transaction, the company will actually become Brightspeed, and Brightspeed has committed publicly to investing an additional $2 billion to bring fiber-based broadband services across those 20 states. I'm happy to announce that the state of North Carolina has been announced as the corporate headquarters, and North Carolina will be getting a significant portion of that investment to bring broadband, fiber-based broadband services to many of our communities. Just pointing to the slide, much of this has actually already been covered. But we started our process of evaluating areas using 477 data. And then just this year, the North Carolina Department of Information Technology has also stood up speed survey data that has also been utilized to identify the areas that are eligible or deemed eligible for this grant program. If a location, as we sit today, already has service that has at least 25 and 3. That's 25 meg coming into your location, 3 megabyte going out of your location. Unfortunately, those areas are ineligible for this particular grant program. However, we've gone through an exhaustive approach to determine what areas we could build to in your communities. So I've got 3 different options for you that I would like to run through. We ask our team we asked our team to go through and create the largest grant possible. And then we scaled it to include a number of different options. So the first project targets approximately 1,990 locations. The total cost of that project is just over $5.5 million. The cost per prim is $2,781. The cost per prim is really the number that most providers look at when they're determining the economic viability of a project. So that's really an important number. That cost per prim at $2,781 would allow us to get max scoring in that category as part of the Great Grant scoring process. The number of locations we think we can serve in this particular project actually comes out at this point to 1,987. And we will be deploying approximately 74.5 fiber miles to do this project. We think based upon the scoring that we feel like we can achieve, that we would receive a grant from the state of North Carolina equal to $3.87 million. The cap is $4 million for each individual grant. We would ask that the county participate with a $500,000 contribution using specifically our ARPA funds. As stated earlier, that's very important. We would receive 1 point by way of partnership, but if you choose to dedicate ARPA funds for this particular process, you also get 2 additional bonus points. A lot of counties will be taking advantage of that. So my personal opinion, it's critical to make sure you get those 3 points in order to ensure that this project is funded. We as Brightspeed would contribute $1.16 million to this particular project. We have an opportunity to build a slightly larger project. The cost of that project is $8.37 million. The cost per premise is $3,217, and that would get us to just over 2,600 locations in the county. We would deploy approximately just shy of 119 miles of fiber. And fiber for a project like this is overwhelmingly the most expensive aspect of a project. Certainly there are electronics that light that fiber, but the fiber deployment itself is really what drives the cost. With that, we would certainly achieve, we feel like we would achieve a grant from the state equal to $4 million. We would ask the county to contribute $1.25 million to this particular project, and we as the provider would contribute $3.12 million. And again, that big jump in cost is really driven by the miles of fiber, and you can see that here. So, and finally, we have the largest project. To me, the first or second project likely makes the most sense. Simply because the cost, as you go further and further into the network, obviously it drives up your cost quite a bit. The cost of this particular project is just over, well, right at $11.25 million. The cost per prim is $3,609. That cost per prim would not allow us to get max scoring. That threshold is at $3,500 per premise. So we would be close to max scoring with this particular application, but not quite there. The number of locations would be 3,116, and you see the number of fiber miles jumps up considerably to 164 fiber miles. Again, we would hit the max grant from the state of North Carolina at $4 million. This would require a contribution from the county at $3.25 million. And as a provider, we would put in just shy of $4 million towards the cost of the project. So the reason we came up with these 3 targets, again, I asked our team to evaluate as big a project as we could possibly do, and then we scaled it down to a couple of different levels so that the county would certainly have options. These are the locations. The blue lines that you see on your map there represents the locations that we would be deploying the fiber from. What's not included in here, if you'll note that I mentioned earlier that Brightspeed is committing quite a bit of its own resources to deploy fiber throughout the 20 states. In this county, in Person County, we're looking at deploying fiber to over 5,000 locations, regardless of the grant program. I don't have that illustrated for you on the map. As you can imagine, we've got a competitor, I'm sure, that's watching us today, and I certainly don't want to divulge where that is. But keep in mind, we will be deploying, or the plan right now is to deploy fiber to an additional 5,000 locations as part of the transition over to Brightspeed, and I'm very excited about that. So this is an illustration of the project from or option 1, I call it, and then this is the option 2. And then finally, option 3. Happy to take any questions.
Commissioner, questions?
So what, if areas do have the 25 megs or higher, you can't go into those areas. So you're targeting areas that are below that, say at 5, 10, 15.
We cannot go into those areas as part of the grant program. We can't seek grant dollars to bring fiber to those locations. Now, as I mentioned, Brightspeed is interested in building to an additional 5,000 locations in the county. Those areas are completely on board for those particular, but yes, you're correct. And you're, so we will be.
But there wouldn't be an avenue to go into these areas without this grant. It wouldn't be feasible for.
They would not be economical to do so.
For you to do so.
When,
right. So
when I showed you the cost per premise earlier on the screen, that's the number that a provider really looks at to determine the economic feasibility of doing a project. And let's just say, for an example, a provider was willing to invest $1,000 or $1,500 to bring service to an area. If the cost exceeds that amount, they're looking to make up the difference somewhere, and the somewhere in this particular example is the grant program.
Okay.
Now, later this year, the state is going to stand up a second grant program called CAB, Completing Access to Broadband. Every piece of legislation must have an acronym for some reason.
Government.
You got it. But so with that particular program, it's going to be funded at $400 million. Each county is capped at $4 million for that. And for that program, 100 counties, you're going to get an opportunity to seek up to $4 million from that program. However, this is your first bite at the apple, I like to say. It's funded with $350 million. Each application is capped at $4 million, but a county can actually win multiple applications up to $8 million. So, and you know, if multiple providers come to you, which obviously that's the case that you're facing today, and you agree to partner with both, it's actually written in the statute that you are completely allowed to do that. The state will take you through the scoring process and determine who the winner is. If there's adequate funds left over, they will roll around and start funding second place applications in your county. So there is a possibility that you could win multiple applications.
Okay. So let's say once this is completed, the grants are awarded, the systems are in place, the affordability factor for the recipients, the end user is going to be there. It's going to be because what I'm seeing is, okay, we can't afford to supply this without this grant to people. The economics aren't there for your business model. So once we do get this grant money and it's in there, is it economically feasible for you to continue to serve clientele? So
with that, the answer to your question is yes. I mean, the grant is what makes it economically feasible to do.
It's the construction. Now,
correct. And I would also like to mention for your citizens, the federal government has a program called ACP, Affordable Connectivity Plan. For low-income households, that essentially provides what will amount to a $30 credit towards the cost of their monthly subscription rate. Brightspeed has announced that they intend to participate in that program, and they're also looking at providing an additional discount on top of that $30 discount. From that has not been finalized yet, but I have been told by the Brightspeed executives, fortunately I get to meet with them weekly. They are certainly looking at doing something above and beyond that for the low-income households.
So the speeds are going to be providing 25 meg or higher?
Well, actually, we are going to, everything that we're talking about here in this particular project is fiber. So initially, right off the bat, customers will be able to get to 1 gig speed, which is technically 940 meg.
Right.
We will offer that as our highest speed initially. And quite frankly, our COO, his name is Tom McGuire, Brightspeed COO. I am here today as a Lumen employee. I have also been advised that upon the close of the transaction, which is expected to be on or about August 1st of this year, that I will indeed transition over. So I will be with you throughout this process. But at any rate, he has advised us that initially the gig speed is going to be available. However, the technology, they're getting their assets or the resources to deploy this from Corning, that they'll be scalable to speeds much higher. So what you're doing with fiber is you're really future-proofing yourself.
Okay. I like the sound of it. I like to actually see it work.
Questions? Anyone else? Thank you, sir, for coming and what you're saying. And I know we have another presenter, and this comment would be for both. I like the sound of what you're saying. And to me, it appears to be one of the greatest steps we have taken as a county-wide provider of broadband. Now, the county has, in the last few years, sort of done the best it could with 52 miles of fiber. Does that connect in any way? What we're talking, this is separate, correct? The fiber the county has run from underground.
Yes, sir.
This is something in addition.
The numbers that I put up on the screen would be brand new fiber put into place. Yes, sir.
But in respect to broadband countywide for our citizens, to me, it sounds like one of the best steps we've been able to take. We have done piecemeal the best we could for several years. And this has been going on quite a while. I could say that one of us, Commissioner Perrier, and I have talked about broadband in the county going back to education probably 10 years ago to be able to provide that connectivity for our children. And the pandemic only made that more obvious that we were not capable of doing that. So I like the sound of what you're saying and compliment you for that. And CenturyLink, because, and I'll be perfectly honest, I think the rest of the board members could say the same thing that I'm about to say, is that probably one of our greatest sources of negativism related to connectivity has been CenturyLink with service as well as connectivity to the underserved and unserved in the county. So again, I compliment your efforts and what you're saying, and I like the proposal. And again, I'm not overstepping. I would say the same thing to the next presenter and provider as well, but thank you.
No, and if I may comment, I certainly understand your frustration. And quite frankly, if you look at the transition over to Brightspeed, that is part of the reason the assets are being sold. Our Lumen's CenturyLink, his name is Jeff Story. He's publicly commented that he believes that Brightspeed will be better able to fund these particular areas that were part of the transaction than they otherwise would have been. And again, Apollo Global Management is the ultimate purchaser. Brightspeed's the name of the company they've stood up. Apollo Global Management has committed an additional $2 billion to bring fiber-based broadband to our community. So I'm very excited about it. For years, I've certainly had the opportunity to explain why deploying broadband, particularly fiber-based broadband, is difficult and expensive to do. And quite frankly, it is difficult and expensive to do. However, we're about to do it. And with the grant program that the state of North Carolina has stood up as part of the GREAT Act, and then the CAB program that we will see later this year, I'm very hopeful that we will get very close to universal broadband over the next few years. So thank you for having me today. I enjoyed being with you, and again, happy to answer any additional questions.
Chairman Powell.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, we have to make a decision today, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So what timeline for each of your three projects here? Do you have a timeline as to when it would be completed?
So the great grant allows for a 2-year build out. Now, that doesn't mean it's all going to get done right at the end of year 2. It will certainly be deployed as we go. So, a number of these locations will be built out well in advance of the 2nd year, but the project is part of the rules of the GREAT Act and the GREAT Grant Program. The project would need to be completed within 2 years. And we're expecting, based on conversations that we've had with the North Carolina Department of Information Technology, awards are expected to be announced sometime this summer. And then there would be a contractual process right after that. So I would say approximately 2 years from late summer is when you're looking at for total project completion.
Okay. And with the fiber, are we looking at aerial or buried?
It would be a combination.
As you're going through the process from one year to the next, will it be actually usable during the build out time, or is it just all accessible at the end of the 2 years?
No,
will it come online?
It will.
Okay.
It will come online as we go. As soon as we can turn it up, we want to turn it up.
What on the lines on the projects just for this particular one? So you would have to actually live on that thoroughway, whether it's either buried or aerial. And let's say if you live 1,500 feet away off of the main highway, would you still have access?
If fiber passes your location, yes.
Okay. So one of the main complaints that we've had with CenturyLink and other competitors is that I live too far off the highway and they will not. I can see the box, but my driveway is just too far away. So you're telling me that they will have access?
Correct. So if I'm not mistaken, as part of the GREAT grant process, we are not allowed to charge an additional fee for drops from the road back to the homes. I would honestly need to verify that, but I'm pretty sure that as part of this particular grant, that we're not allowed to charge an additional fee for the drop. So from the road to the house, that is correct.
Because that's a big issue right now.
No, I understand.
Okay, and I'm going to ask that same question to the next presenter too, but if you could get that answer.
Absolutely, I'll be happy to, and I'll respond back.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Palmer.
Commissioner Pereira hit every point I was going to ask.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you for reading your mind. Any other questions?
I think not. Thank you very much.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be with you today, and hopefully we're able to reach a partnership and look forward to bringing additional services to Person County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Catherine, will you introduce our next?
Yeah,
speaker?
let's.
Our next speaker is joining us on Zoom, and this is Justin Delancey from Charter Communications.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hope everyone's doing well this morning. I'm Justin Delancey, Senior Manager for Government Affairs with Charter Communications. I apologize if I sound a little croupy. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, and it's part of the reason why I'm not joining you in person today. But I do want to thank you for allowing me to speak. It's always tough going behind Mr. Brewer. He takes all of my talking points, and while we're different companies, we're going after the same grant. We're in the same business, so a lot of the things that you'll hear me say today is sort of echoing what Steve said. Charter is very excited for this opportunity to grow in Person County. We have been sort of on a tear, if you will, expanding across the state. Charter Communications has a 41 state footprint. We're investing significant amounts of money across the country, but more importantly, over 100 million in North Carolina alone. As many of you know, Charter has already won a large federal grant in the county through the RDOF fund, or the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. It represents about 1,100 households. You can see on the map in front of you where those areas are that the households will be connected. So we're very excited to be completing that project. We've targeted completion for the end of 2023. So much like any grant that we would hopefully apply with you and win through the state, the timeline for that build, kind of like Steve said in his presentation, as we lay that fiber, we'll be turning on those households. And so your residents will see we'll see a service offering from Charter in those areas. The specific great grant project that we'd like to commit to you today is for approximately 500 passings or households in the county. Those are outlined by the red dots that you see on the map that's been provided. So as you can see, it's pretty much in those areas of need all throughout the county. This is a full fiber build, fiber to the premise. So much like our competitors, once services turned on, residents would be eligible for gig speeds right away. And, we see the market growing as technology evolves and the market changes. We see those speeds being able to increase to much larger over time. This is truly an almost future-proof build. So it's complete fiber to the premise. Excuse me. As you can see also in front of you, we would be requesting a small contribution from the county, $250,000, and that would be primarily to help us score better so that we got a greater shot of providing the service to your residents. Sorry, my screen went in front of me. I'm happy to answer any questions. A lot of the things that were said before kind of remain. I do want to point out this is complete new build to unserved areas. So we're not overbuilding any of our current network. This is 100% new location build. And it will be a mix of overground, underground, basically however we can get to the residents, we'll get there. Happy to stand for any questions. I want to be mindful of your time, and I don't want to repeat a lot of things, but we're very excited about this project, very excited about what it means to the citizens of Person County, and hope that we can partner with you going forward and be successful in this grant application.
Questions?
How much fiber does Charter have now in place? How many miles of fiber in Person County?
I don't have the exact mileage in front of me, but we do have a pretty robust presence in the county. When you look basically spidering out from Roxborough, following the major interstates, we have presence. But I can look and get that exact mileage for you and report back.
Okay, because you're saying your premises reached is 500 versus say 2,600?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you're looking at 97 miles of fiber versus 120?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I can't speak to how our competitors come up with their mileage in their plant. Like I said, this is complete new build. I'm not on the construction side of things, so I can't can't speak to those specific details, but I can certainly find out and get back to you.
Okay.
I don't have any more questions for him, but I have other comments for the board to discuss.
Any further questions of our presenter?
I just asked the same
Yes,
question
sir.
that I asked the previous presenter. These 500 premises reached, if they are not right on the main highway, and they live in an extended driveway, will you charge extra to have them tap into the fiber?
So when you asked that question to Steve, I started frantically searching as well. I don't believe, much like Steve, I believe that that's going to be covered under the grant provinces. Typically speaking, in a charter build, regardless of what grant process it's under, we sort of have a 1,500 foot rule to where we will build, we will do a drop 1,500 feet down a driveway. I don't, that gets probably 95% of your residential driveways. I believe under the great grant, much like Mr. Brewer, that we are required to do those drops, and we would certainly do those drops as required under the program.
I have a question, and this is maybe to both of you. If part of putting that drop in is using the ditch, which is actually dragging the cable, the line for the cable, if the homeowner, the property owner can provide the difference or provide the trench, does that make it easier? Is there anything prohibiting people from being able to do their own trenching if you guys won't do the trenching all the way to a property?
As stated earlier, I'm almost positive, I will verify that.
Okay.
I'm almost positive that as part of the great grant, we are not allowed to charge additional for drops. So hopefully,
but you got a quarter-mile road. You got a quarter-mile road. That's going to be covered. We need to verify that, yeah. But my question is, if there is any kind of stipulation that says you've got limits on the depth of where you can go, how far you can go, is there anything prohibiting the property owners who want access to assisting in providing the trenching, which all it is a ditch witch doing a trench so that you can lay the cable or the fiber?
Yeah, I understand your question.
Okay, I just
part of the construction crew. I don't know the specific answer that I'll be happy to ask.
Okay, I just know if there's some kind of restriction that you can't do it.
Typically, when piling drops, it wouldn't be an open trench. You would pile the drops minimum 12 inches in.
But they have to trench. They have to trench it, and I think that's part of the big expense of it.
I mean, there's a piece of equipment that we use to bury drops.
Right.
Yeah.
Very effective piece of equipment, puts it at the proper depth. Basically cuts a small slit. It's not like it's a open wide area.
No, but it's a high-speed ditch witch is really what it is.
But I don't know the answer to your question. Again, happy to verify that.
Okay, great, thanks.
How soon could we have an answer?
I'll get you one of that.
Today?
But I am almost positive that as part of the GRADE Act, we are not allowed to charge for drops.
Sounds good.
Long drops.
Okay.
I just have a couple more slides to go through, and then we can have a little time for discussion and any other questions that you might have. So thank you both, Justin and Steve, again, for being here and for providing that information to us. So as they have mentioned, there is another program coming behind the GRADE Grant program. So the Completing Access to Broadband, or CAB program, is also a state grant program. We don't have a whole lot of information yet on this because they have been focusing on the GRADE Grant. So once this application period closes for GRADE Grant, then we should expect to get more details about the CAB program. But in this particular program, it will be structured differently. The county can partner with the state to go back to our maps, working in conjunction with the state to identify what is left? What did we not accomplish through the Great Grant Program and all the other efforts that we've made over the years? So with that particular process, we'll work to hone down where do we need to continue to focus. And then we would work with the state to put some of our money in and their money in and release an RFP to providers. So it would specifically describe what we are looking for and the funding available so that they can then submit their proposals in response to those RFPs. So that's the next phase after Great Grant, but we definitely want to take this opportunity that's in front of us now.
With phase 2, so to speak, would that be county funding or does that revert back
ARP funding as
okay.
well?
All right, thank you.
So, and both Brightspeed and Charter have expressed an interest in working with us on the CAB program as well, once we've gotten the Great Grant process settled. So with that in mind, you may want to think today about your specific commitments to the Great Grant Program in terms of ARP funding. And also if there is an additional amount of ARP funding that you kind of want to hold in reserve for the next round. Because as you know, we have quite a few proposals on the table for other great projects that we can do with the ARP funds. But in order, and we heard at your retreat, we know that broadband is at the top of the list of your priorities. So with the ARP funding helping us score higher on the applications and better position us with what we want to do with broadband, we want to make sure that we have some of that reserved. And then if we can identify the other pot of ARP funds that we can start making some recommendations for other projects. We just want to stay within those parameters and make sure that we still have an adequate amount dedicated to the broadband expansion. So you have some decision points today. Brightspeed has presented you with 3 options, and we can go back and look at those in more detail. But what they are asking today is for you to select one of those options, 1, 2, or 3. What are you willing to commit to funding if the Great Grant application is successful? So in doing so, you will select one of those options and authorize the county manager to sign a memorandum of understanding with Brightspeed. And you are given a sample of that in your agenda packet. So that will designate how much the county is willing to commit in terms of funding. The next one is whether or not to support the option that Charter has presented you. And if you recall, that is a request for the county to commit $250,000 in ARP funds to the Charter grant proposal. And if so, then the chairman would be signing a resolution of support with Charter. There's also a confidentiality agreement that Charter has asked us to sign. And in both instances, they have requested that we provide letters of support to accompany the grant applications. And so if you could also authorize the chair to sign a letter of support for either or both grants, that would be great. And I will also be glad to ask the school system and other entities within Person County if they also would like to contribute letters of support over the next week or so to those applications. So with that in mind, oh, okay. Can I go back? Okay. Would y'all like to look back at the summary for Brightspeed? There were 3 options there. Do y'all have any questions for me before jump back to the end? Do y'all have any questions for me or
questions?
Discussion? Yeah.
You want?
I have.
Yes, sir.
Considering the multiple options from the providers,
yes,
I've been hearing for going on 2 years now that the Mayo Lake area is virtually, and of course, if you drive down Highway 49, you're not going to call anybody. So does all of these options include the northeast sector of Person County?
Okay, and if you're speaking about cellular service in those areas, this is not going to relate to the cellular service. But if you look back at the maps, as far as reaching up to the Mayo Lake area, the option number 2 that Brightspeed has proposed is getting up in that area. And then Charters is also reaching some areas around Mayo Lake as well.
We have 2 options on the Mayo Lake area here, option 2 and 3.
Right.
3 is larger, 2 is of course substantially smaller coverage.
Right, so 2 is more cost effective than option number 3, if you look at it that way. So option number 2 is asking the county for $1.25 million in ARP funding. Option number 2 or 3 jumps all the way up to 3.25. So option number 3 will reach some additional premises, again, at a substantially higher cost. So our discussions have been that if you go with option 2, then what we're missing can certainly be reevaluated and targeted through the CAB program. If you choose right now to focus on the option that when you look at the cost per premises is lower and you're not seeing that $2 million jump in what you're dedicating in terms of the ARP.
Did you also mention that option number 3 has something to do with the scoring? It could negatively affect the scoring part of
that is
grant
correct
request,
because that bumps it up.
So I would kind of just automatically say maybe we should just put that on the back burner for sure, because why would we go for a grant already knowing that we're going to have points against us versus for us?
Right.
And would what's left out with option 3 be included in phase 2?
That can be included in the CAB program.
Okay.
And going back to the way they describe the way this is going to work, if you support both applications, the state is going to score Brightspeed's application and Charter's application. And whichever one of those scores the highest in the first round, the grant will be awarded. Then when they go back around, if there's funding left over and they're going to look at funding a second application in Person County, they will look to see if there was any overlap in those 2 applications. And they'll go back and renegotiate that with the second provider.
Okay.
So that we're not duplicating our efforts. So that might look a little different.
Okay, and I believe Mr. Burrell had a comment.
She's fine. And the thing with the CAP program coming later in the year versus option 3, we'll simply be able to leverage more state dollars. And that's why option 3, the cost per prim usage goes up significantly. And that's what requires an additional higher commitment from the county. By way of the CAB program, you'll be able to leverage more state dollars, less county dollars. So quite frankly, it would make sense, I believe, to go with option 2. But again, I task our team with putting forward the largest grant we could possibly do initially, and that's why we started bringing in work.
So the biggest bang for your buck at this point is option 2.
I would say it is certainly the most economic.
It's 4 times the premises.
Thank you.
Charter. It's 4 times.
Oh, yeah.
Times the premises covered.
It's actually 5 times. Option number 2 is 2,600.
Right. Okay.
Right. So that's putting in 1.25 million. And then if you look at the charter application, that one is for 500 and it's requesting $250,000 from the county.
But it's only 500.
Correct.
Only serve 500 people, where we're looking at 2,600. That's a big deal to me.
And this money is coming out of the 7-point-something million that we're getting.
Right.
I think.
Yes.
That's why I said earlier, this is one of the best opportunities I've seen in the county with broadband throughout the county, pretty much since we've been talking about this subject.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So
any questions for further clarity? Yes, sir.
To make a motion.
Yes, sir.
Use one today.
Yes. Just
Okay.
did you have something
I
else you
did
wanted
get
to
a
say?
response back. I've been working here on our drop question. I wish I brought my reading glasses.
Come on here.
I
Okay.
Broadband access is considered available if the internet carrier can provide broadband services to a location immediately or within 10 business days upon request and without cost to the customer other than standard connection cost. And drop is not part of it. So drop will be taken care of as part of the program.
That's very good news.
Yeah, it's good.
So yes, the decisions before the board are whether or not to support one of the Brightspeed proposals, whether or not to also support the charter grant application as well, and to authorize the signing of the documents associated with those.
So we're choosing one or both?
You can choose one or both. You have to choose one option for Brightspeed or none. And then there's one option to consider for charter or none.
Well, I'm in favor of option 2 for Brightspeed.
I'm in favor of that too.
Is that a motion? Okay, go ahead.
One more question, real quick.
Sure.
So
We'll discuss.
I think I'm getting the feeling we're all kind of in support of number 2 for Brightspeed. So we go with one proposal or both? Because my question is, if they're both going for the grant.
Well, and Justin, you may want to comment on this.
Competition here. I'm just curious how this all works out at the end of the day.
Right. So with Charter's proposal, they are going for the grant, whether or not we put funding towards it or not.
Okay.
But that $250,000 commitment from the county will allow it to score higher.
Okay.
So, you know, I don't know how it's all going to work out in that first round as far as whether Brightspeed will score higher or Charter. Is that a correct statement, Justin?
I think it is. And I also think that it's important to point out that you're not, you know, I don't want to, you know, discourage you from doing anything that you're thinking, but no one is guaranteed a win in their county, right? So you want to put as many sort of opportunities into the basket that you can, because even though, you know, look, our competitors may have a great, they may have a great application and we feel like we have a great application. Both of those applications could win or both of those applications could lose because they're stacked up against every other application in the state and we're not just competing against one another. So to give the county its best opportunity for success, you probably want more than one application in the hopper. And that's just my take on it.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Okay, go ahead.
So we'd be looking at, if we were to do both, we're looking at 1.5 AARP. Right? Is that right?
Yes. You would be designating $1.5 million of our ARP funds to go towards the Great Grant. So, so yes, if y'all make a decision on that today, it would also be good for staff if you could provide some guidance on what you might want us to set aside, hold in reserve for the CAB program. You know, just a general idea. You don't have to. We'd like to come back to you. The CAB program is the county will be contributing and the state will be contributing, but we don't have enough information yet to know how much we might need to contribute. But if you'd like for us to come back to you with some proposals on some of the other projects that have been suggested for ARP funding, maybe if you can just give us some direction on how much of the funds you might like us to consider at this time for some
So
other
you want
projects.
a dollar amount in that?
Yeah,
okay.
but let's.
Right. Moving forward on any of those other projects until the CAB grant program gets rolled out and we know how much you want to allocate of your ARP funds to that. We weren't sure if you were wanting to move forward on some of the county, you know, transformational projects that we've talked about at your retreat with the upcoming budget, or if you just want to hold off. Remind you that you have a few years to spend this funding. So we're not under the gun.
Program, when do we know when that's?
Later this summer is kind of what they're telling us.
It shouldn't be
July.
long before we
after
get that
budget.
information.
Yeah.
So yeah, the important decision points today are on the two proposals in front of you. And then we are seeking some guidance about how you would like for us to proceed, whether we proceed now with evaluating other proposals outside of broadband, or if we hold off a bit until we get some more information about the next round of funding for broadband.
Okay. So if we make a proposal to go with Brightspeed and we don't authorize any funding for Charter is going to go ahead and go forward with or without us. Is Brightspeed going to do the same thing? Are you pushing forward with or without county?
I will tell you this, without a county contribution, the number of field locations that we would be able to pursue will go down.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Now, if the grant is approved, who's going to be the liaison between Central Link and Person County?
Well, I guess the county manager's office or IT. We haven't
I'm not
specifically
worried
designated.
about, I won't.
Do you mean on the
a point of
private side?
contact From if we're going in and with the request, I just want a firm contact because
Right.
we're going to get phone calls.
Right.
Okay.
He means
And
on the private side. So I don't know if that's you, Steve, or.
Reporting requirements throughout the build timeframe with the state. We have been fortunate enough to win other great grants before, and there are reporting requirements throughout the state. We'd be happy to provide you with the same information. And quite frankly, if we are awarded, we will ultimately sign a contract with the state, and we'll sign a contract with the county. We can cover those terms.
Okay. I just.
Yeah.
No, I completely understand where you're coming from.
We've had some experience with Sister in the past, and
you're putting commitment towards the project that you deserve response.
all right. I just want to make sure that
We're together.
if we approve this, we get to see you again sometime. So
We have you on record here, by the way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a proposal that the board accept option number 2 with Brightspeed, and that we go forward and allow Charter Communication to go ahead and do their application without our commitment. And I would like to also suggest that we put about $250,000 in reserve for future broadband that's not covered from the ARP funds.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Further discussion?
and does that motion include a resolution for the chairman to sign in support, which they need?
So you can, the resolution of support would be for Charter's application. It would indicate that the county will not be putting forth the funds though, if this particular motion is approved.
Further discussion?
And if I may.
Yes.
I would like to note that while Charter is committed and we would put forward an application, it obviously would not score as well as with the county support. I just want to be clear on that.
Right.
So, you know, we talk about having multiple options to get the county where it needs to be, and you would be, you know, in effect, putting one of your options at an extreme disadvantage. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Right. So if you want to position both applications to potentially be as competitive as possible, putting the matching funds in there from the county is going to position both of the applications in the best possible light to compete in the first round and the second round if it gets to the second round.
But only one's going to win a grant.
No, they can both.
Both could win.
Yeah,
Okay,
both
so
could win.
okay.
Yes.
So
they will go through one round, and then if there is money left over, then they'll go through a second round.
okay.
Yes.
Any more discussion? Everyone clear on the motion? Need to read it again? Y'all clear? Just so we're clear. Okay, so all in favor of the motion, as stated, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining in with us today. Item number 6 on our agenda is medical insurance plan renewal. Ms. York.
Good morning, commissioners. I briefly previewed with you the upcoming employee health insurance plan at your board retreat. And so we are in the midst of renewing our health insurance and thought that it was a great time to go ahead and bring our insurance broker in front of you to kind of talk through the performance of the health insurance plan and to also preview with you some plan designs that we would like to propose in the upcoming renewal process. Shortly after the county made the decision to go to become self-insured, we went through a competitive process to hire our insurance broker. So Mark III is the broker that we have been working with for several years now, have a great working relationship with them as well as with Cigna, our insurance provider, but we haven't brought Mark in front of you for quite some time. So thought now was as good a time as any to kind of help us navigate the renewal process and let you know what we're seeing. And it's not as bad as what I previewed with you back in at your board retreat. So we're seeing the trends a little better. So I told Mark it was safe to come now that, that the plan is doing a little better.
Even if it wasn't safe, I'm glad it was. Thank you. So thanks for having me. It has been a few years since I've been in front of you. And it has been a difficult 4 or 5 years for the county from a plan performance, the claims that have occurred within the plan of the employees, retirees, and the members. So I want to give you an overview, and I think we have a decent place to end up. Little contribution from everyone. So we'll start, let's see, does this advance?
Yes, just there you go.
There we go. Okay, great. So just a little overview, a reminder of who we are. So we focus on public sector employers. We have a significant presence in the public sector, over 300,000 employees that we serve. And as you can see from the next slide, we have a substantial presence in North Carolina. We work with over 30 counties across the state, over 60, including towns and cities as well. So we have a strong presence and a significant amount of influence within this space. We get to see a lot of things that are going on. And I think we bring a lot of value to the table for the county and for the employees. So we provide a lot of services, not only for you, but other clients. And it includes the health plan, helping to construct unique cost containment opportunities, best-in-class service, ancillary lines for your employees, enrollment services, communication services. So there's a lot that we do for your organization. And from a consulting side, we take a look at a substantial list of opportunities that exist for all of our clients, and y'all as an organization have benefited from those, including the leverage that we bring with all the payers across the state. So over the last 5 years, you have had a trend or an annual increase averaging approximately 20%, which is substantially above the market. And it's not that anyone has done anything wrong here, but it's a function of the claims that you have seen within your population. So claims have more than doubled. And the question is why, right? So the answer is some unique claim situations, one individual being one person incurring $2.4 million of claims, which is not the fault of the individual in that particular situation, but an example of the catastrophic nature of the claims that the organization has incurred. And it's not just oncology, it's COVID, it's hereditary, pharmaceutical conditions, accidents, and even picking up individuals from other public sector employers that have significant issues that are genetic in nature. So all have lost during this process. The county employees and even the payers have lost substantial amounts of funds. We've done a lot of things to mitigate the cost acceleration. The plan has been bid 2 years in a row, and it was bid a couple of years prior to that. There have been benefit design changes. There have been benefit strategy changes, including implementing a health savings account, You've got a pass-through pharmacy contract that is national account size and scale, and it's based on our leverage. In fact, across multiple payers, but in this case, it's translated to about $400,000 in rebate payments back to the county, which is a national account scale of significantly above your size. We've also implemented health improvement strategies, including obesity and diabetes wellness initiatives that have had impact for your employee population. So for the second year in a row, the plan has been bid. The responses that we received back were from Aetna, Blue Cross, Cigna, and MedCost. Only Cigna and Aetna's proposals are valid or firm. Blue Cross and MedCost did not provide a stop loss quote. And what stop loss is the risk insurance that protects you against the high claims. And Blue Cross did not provide a firm proposal as well. So they're concerned about the claims that still exist within the organization. From an overall cost perspective, both the pharmacy contract and the medical negotiation that Cigna has with the providers is best in class and is the most competitive that's available. Because you're self-funded, that means they also have the most advantage from a cost containment perspective. And from a service perspective and from a financial perspective, Cigna has been a very, very good partner for the county. If you look at just the reimbursements versus the premium payments in the stop loss contract, so Cigna has received $2.1 million in reimbursements over this 7-year period. They paid out $5.3 million. I mean, that's a net loss position of $3.2 million. And one of the reasons why Cigna has continued to be astoundingly competitive is because they blend this across their entire book of business and don't just look at Person County when they're rating you from a stop loss perspective. The loss position is even greater than that because 100% is not a break-even position. It's more like about 75 to 80%, so their losses are bigger than that. But as a layperson, that's easy to sort of gain the premiums paid in, the reimbursements paid out. So we track the claims for the county, and this goes back to 2016-17, and I've highlighted the important thing that I want you to understand. So in 2016-17, claims went up about 13%. That's where that red circle is. It says 112.71. In 17-18, claims went up against the prior year 25%. On the next slide, it was up almost another 25% in 18-19, and I'm testing my vision skills this morning. The glasses are working well. 19-20, the claims went up about 43 or 44%. Finally started to settle down in the 2021 plan year of only being up about 5.6%. And that is the claims that occur within your organization and no one else's. So again, just a lot of challenging things from a healthcare perspective that are going on. In 2021, the plan was bid. Cigna was the most competitive at that point as well. I'm sorry, I think I'm somehow moving it. The original cost expectation was a 22% increase. We actually made plan design changes, implemented the HSA. The net effect was about a 14.5% funding increase, which still wasn't sufficient for the claims. This is the Heidi slide where she came in and told you the world was ending, where the original renewal was about a 32. And that's based on your claims and expected costs. The plan was bid subsequent to this conversation. One of the things, this is part of the discussion on some of the strategies that we're recommending for you. This is the current year claims, and claims are actually down about 7%. So finally, we had leveling off last year. We're actually seeing claims lower this year. We need several more years of this to be completely caught up, but hopefully we're in a good trend. But what this is showing is there's 4 different sets of rows. The top one that's circled in the green are the claims per employee per month for the health savings account plan. The HSA plan, the consumer driven health plan, is running well relative to the copay plan. Now, it's a function of the population, which is small, that's in the health savings account plan. If you had any of your high claimants in the OAP, the copay plan, go into the HSA plan, it would skew those numbers accordingly if they had significant claims. But typically, the population that goes in the HSA is younger, is healthier, and or is more aware of consumerism. So based on the fact that the health savings account plan is running substantially better than the copay plan, we're making some recommendations on how to provide your employees with a set of benefits and rates that are unchanged and still provides good coverage for your employees. Slide 15. This is the result of the bid process that occurred. Cigna continues to be the most cost-effective on a fixed cost basis. So they're more competitive than Aetna. Blue Cross and MedCost in this conversation are not in the discussion because their stop loss proposals are not firm. They can change those and completely change the terms of the contract. And if you look at the overall wellness dollars, implementation money, the fixed cost, Cigna is the clear winner. Slide 16 is just a comparison of what the renewals would look like if you laid all of them side by side and assumed that the Blue Cross proposal was firm. Blue Cross would be a 44% increase. Aetna would be a 31%. If you were fully insured, it would be almost a 40% increase. Cigna has come in, all the credits that you get without any benefit changes, you're looking at a reduction of that 32 down to a 27. So plan recommendation. So the original plan unchanged would be about a 27. We've made some plan design changes to the copay plan, the PPO plan, with the only change to the HSA would actually be increasing the funding towards the health savings account, which is a reflection of how the claims have run. So you're narrowing the gap of out-of-pockets in option 1 to the benefit of the employees. So you're actually making the benefit better because you're giving them more money to pay for out-of-pocket expenses, which is on a pre-tax basis. The rates for option 1, you see under the 22-23 recommendation, which is no increase in the HSA contribution from the employee for dependent coverage. There is an increase across the board equally from the county side for both plans. There would also be a change outside of the benefits for the PPO plan, OAP plan of employees paying towards the premium. Again, this is something that was done a couple of years ago. It was eliminated, but the funding is needed based on the plan performance of the PPO plan. So dependent rates would go up. There would be a contribution from both employees and retirees for participation as an employee or a retiree only. And then finally, the claims are starting to flatten out, which is a really good thing. Cigna has been a great partner, not only on the service side, on the discount side, but on the financial side with the stop loss. As I mentioned earlier, the HSA plan is outperforming. And for that reason, we're recommending to hold the premiums, improve the HSA contribution, and not charge the employees any money. And then to make the plan design changes for the PPO plan and the contribution increases to get us to a mid-teens funding level. Questions? And I know I've covered a lot of ground with that.
Like reading actuary tables.
And I apologize. And usually Tracy is the one in the back that corrects me. Every profession has its language. It's speak, and sometimes I speak in the benefits business speak, and sometimes it's not intentional. It's just the technical side of it. So if I've said anything that needs clarification, just let me know.
Okay, comments, commissioners, questions?
What is the HSA participation rate?
It's really low. It's about 20 employees, 25 employees. So
Not many of us.
no, and let me talk about that for just a second.
Okay,
So Tracy and I and Sonya's looking at me somewhere.
Okay.
We actually had meetings last year and communicated it really hard. But it is a change that people are uncomfortable with sometimes. And the reason why is most of your employees are interested in knowing exactly what their costs are going to be when they go to the doctor or when they go to the pharmacy. So if you have a copay, you don't have to sort of guess, well, it's going to be $25, it's going to be $30. I'm going to get a medication, it's going to be $10 for a generic. In the HSA plan, a consumer-driven health plan, you don't know precisely exactly what your costs are going to be. And that is, when you're making $35,000, that is a little bit of a scary process. When you're younger, well, if you're younger or healthier, typically you won't have a lot of traffic with the providers. It gives you an opportunity to build up savings. And when you get a couple of $1,000s worth of savings in place, then you've got the reserve, if you will, on a personal level to be able to go and not be too concerned about it. Because in the HSA plan, as an individual, the maximum out of pocket is $3,500 total. When you take the county's contribution of $900, now you're looking at $2,600 total of out of pocket exposure. But it's that, it's that first dollar cost that you have to bear. And so you have to be a consumer and you have to have some money to be able to pay those bills. And it's a little bit nerve wracking to the layperson. I've been in an HSA for 20 years. That's what we provide at Mark III. And a lot of us have benefited from being in it. Typically, and this is what we told the employees, if it makes a lot of economic sense to do it, you might have a year where that doesn't work out. It always seems that way. But in the long haul, especially if you have a good health status, you're going to be better off. Even if you have a significant challenge, your total out of pocket is going to be much less in the HSA than the PPO plan.
Right,
but we communicated the heck out of it to try to
get. Okay, so the benefit, so they couldn't see the cost benefit of it then primarily. It was just too risky.
Yeah, in their opinion. But I will tell you, this plan design, like we've got another conversation with a client going on, and they want like a $3,000 deductible and $6,000 of out of pocket. Yours is substantially below. We've got 25 years of HSA implementation experience. We know what your employees want. And so we've actually got the out of pocket and the deductible almost down to the federal minimum. So the minimum you can have in a deductible for HSA rules federally is $1,400. Yours is at $1,500. And we've got it as low as possible. It's not calling it a high deductible plan. It's not accurate anymore. It's actually a low deductible plan.
Okay.
How much? I'm on the HSA plan myself, and I think they're good, me personally. But so when we have an employee that says I want to start the HSA plan, will they start at zero, or what would their money?
No. So the funding strategy is that the entire $900 right now today, $700 is funded at the beginning of the plan year. So they've actually got seed money from the county to make it as attractive as possible. In the conversation with staff, it was like, well, what is the average that we're seeing across our book of business? And probably about $850 to $900 is now the average. 10 years ago, it was $750, but it's been climbing up. So employees, they obviously can set aside money on their own, but the county is putting dollars up front that will help cushion any out-of-pocket experience that they have starting out. So right out of the box, 7-1, you go to the doctor, you've got $900 to work with, and it covers covers about 66% of the total out-of-pocket, deductible out-of-pocket. And then they transition beyond the $1,500 to 20%. So it's a good deal, and it takes time, right? Changing the rate structure to employees contributing $50 on the PPO plan, while for those that are on it won't be popular, but it will make them relook at the HSA. So for example, I'm in the PPO today. if I stay in a PPO, I'm going to know I'm going to contribute $600 towards the funding of the plan. If I go to the HSA, I can take that $600, put it in the HSA with the local government federal credit union, which is the best institution for fixed money going. There's no fees like you pay, Mr. Sims. It's the best interest rate. It doesn't have an investment component, but most people aren't really looking for that. And now I've got my entire deductible satisfied.
Right.
Through in the 12-month period of time, if I just put $50 per month away. And now all I've got to worry about is 20% up to another $2,000. So it's a good deal, and it'll motivate people to take another look at it. There are employees, wherever Sonia is, they came to her and said, well, the HSA is terrible. I don't like it. It's not what I wanted, that we're in it today. And that's not unusual either, because I had a clerk to the board who switched the HSA contribution 3 times. Her and her family went into it year 1, hated it, went back to a co-pay plan, realized it was costing them more to be in the PPO plan, and then went back into the HSA and stayed there ever since. So it's an education. You have to be more assertive as a consumer, because a lot of times maybe physicians' offices want you to pay up front, or hospitals want you to pay up front. It's like, no, I'm waiting for the EOB to process, then I'll pay off the explanation of it.
Any questions?
Can I just sort of recap the financial position then with what we're going to see in the upcoming budget? So if we were to make no changes at all, we would have that 27% increase that Mark mentioned. With the changes and the contribution from employees, we're looking at a 14.46% increase. So that's going up about $600,000 next year of new funding that we'll need to put towards health insurance to provide even this revised plan. So your total cost of providing insurance then from employees is about $4.7 million. You will see in every departmental budget then an increase in the health insurance line of 14.46% in the upcoming budget just to provide the insurance.
And let me back up just one thing that Ms. York is saying. It would cost you more to be fully insured. You don't, and I'll speak to finance, you don't have an option, in my opinion, of funding less than that. So it's not that there's a choice to fund, it is a need to fund because the claims will come in.
Right.
And so I just want to back that up. It's not, we're just making this voluntary decision to fund at a specific level. It's a need to fund at that specific level.
Right, based on the claims
and
that we
option 1
receive.
is reducing that funding need down from 27 into the mid-14s.
With some revisions, right. Trying to be responsible and make this a little more manageable and sustainable. Every year, we do not have enough money to cover and are having to scramble to put more funding to cover our claims. So
yeah, as Amy would say, tell you, the bills are coming in and they've got to be covered. And
yeah,
the challenge that the plan has had, to nobody's fault, it's just been this outrageous 20% trend per year, which is 3 times the norm. And it's finally leveling off so that hopefully we can get into a happier place from a budgetary standpoint.
Very expensive.
Yeah. In addition to what you just said, a need to fund, I think it's an obligation to fund on the part of the county, because at the end of the day, our employees are the ones that make it happen. We can make decisions, but our county employees are the ones that make it happen, make it work at the end of the day. And I'm always on board with supporting them and their needs, and something we definitely need to take care of here. Any other comments? So we've got tons of information. Going forward, what do you need in the way of them?
I don't need anything. I just wanted the opportunity for you all to talk directly with Mark and have your questions answered by him. And then I will take this information and put it into your recommended budget that you'll receive in May.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Item number 7 on our agenda is United Development Ordinance Consultant Selection and Steering Committee. Ms. Oakley.
Good morning, board members.
Morning.
At the August 16th, 2021 Board of Commissioner meeting, I gave the board an update on the status of our existing ordinances. At that meeting, the board discussed the option of starting on a new unified development ordinance to address some of the outstanding issues that we have with our current ordinance. Aside from being very outdated as they were written in the mid 80s and early 90s. They also have contradictory information. They're not user friendly. And as we all know, the zoning ordinance has a zoning district, RC, which encompasses the majority of the county and allows for a multitude of uses from residential, commercial to industrial. So the board at that meeting discussed at length a new UDO and directed staff to go ahead and release an RFP. I had hoped to have the RFP released sooner. However, as you're aware, since I've been here quite often, we've been very busy at the planning department. So I was able to release the RFP on December 29th of 2021. And I had 5 consulting firms that submitted proposals. They included Insight, SNME Inc., Stewart, CodeWright, and Benchmark. And all of the submittals that I received were at or under that original proposed budget of $100,000. Staff evaluated each proposal and ranked the RFPs according to the criteria that was listed in the RFP. And that ranking was included in your packet in a spreadsheet. Staff then conducted phone interviews with the 3 highest scoring firms, reviewed their existing bodies of work, and contacted their references. And we really took a deep dive into the references. And based on the aforementioned criteria, staff is recommending that the board select Benchmark as the consultant for the new UDO. As you probably recall, Benchmark recently completed the joint comprehensive land use plan for the county and city of Roxborough, and they are very familiar with Person County. Staff reviewed recent UDOs that Benchmark had drafted from other jurisdictions and found them to be aesthetically pleasing, easy to navigate, and they met all North Carolina general statutes. Benchmark also proposed an extensive public participation process to engage the citizens and the stakeholders, along with keeping the planning board and the Board of Commissioners updated throughout the entire process. Separately, staff, I would also like to proceed with advertising for a new UDO committee that would be involved in the creation of a new UDO. Staff proposes that the UDO committee consist of the following, and that's 1 Board of Commissioner member, similar to as we did the comprehensive land use plan. We had Chairman Powell as your representative, 1 planning board member, the economic development director or her designee. I did reach out to her as I felt her involvement would be very important, and she has agreed to participate on that committee, along with 5 citizens, landowners, business owners in the county, and the 2 planning staff members. I have already polled the planning board to see if there was any interest, and the chairman, Mr. Barry Walker, has expressed interest in being appointed and serving as the planning board representative, and so far the board members are all in agreement with that. So what I am looking for today is that a recommendation to go ahead and proceed to select Benchmark as the consultant for the new UDO and to go ahead and begin that immediately after the execution of a contract with that firm, and also to have the green light to go ahead and advertise for the new UDO committee, which I hope would be appointed at either an April or a May meeting. If you have any questions of me at this time, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions? None? Oh, okay.
Why are you looking at me like that?
I think I looked at everybody that way. Yeah.
Chairman
Okay.
Powell.
Yes.
I'd like to make a recommendation. We move forward with Benchmark. That presentation 3 months ago was on spot. I really appreciated the consultant who brought it to us. I like the idea, the general idea overall, and I think it's a good plan for the county.
Any other comments? thank you for saying that. I did work with that organization during the county-wide, city-wide land use plan and found them to be very, very open, very transparent, very professional in their work. I'm not putting in a plug for them at all. I'm just saying that from experience, but echoing what you just said there. So any other comments? So do we need to appoint a commissioner to that today? Would you like that today?
If you don't feel comfortable doing it today, I think either at an April meeting, whenever we select the committee members, once it's advertised, if you want to mull it over, everyone's anxious to volunteer. We can do it at a later meeting day. It doesn't need to be today.
Okay, well, I'm okay with that. If everybody else is,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it. Okay. Any other questions? Need anything? All good. Thank you very much.
So we have the go-ahead to
Yes.
release the contract. Okay.
You need that in the form of a motion, though. Yeah. Anything else, though?
Mr. Palmer has a motion.
Yes, please.
He has already made the motion.
Yeah, I've already made the motion.
Yes, go ahead. And no other comment. All in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you,
looking
sir.
forward to this.
Thank you. Item number 8, request to approve audit firm. Ms. Weinberg.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. You should all see in your packets an abstract that includes my recommendation of a new firm to perform the county's annual financial audit for fiscal years ending 2022, 2023, and 2024. As I mentioned at the retreat, our current audit firm notified us back in December that they were dissolving their governmental audit services. This caused the need for the county to bid out services for review of our next audit report. We submitted a request for proposal on January the 25th and thankfully received 2 bids by the February 28th deadline. The market is currently diluted with requests for proposals since many audit firms are mimicking our current firm's decision to get out of the governmental audit business. This is likely the result of the ramp up of requirements levied by the state auditor's office for Medicaid programs and federal and state grants that are complex and timely to review. So frankly, we felt fortunate that we didn't have to extend our timeline in pursuit of audit proposals. For the 2 that we received, you should have a bid summary that followed the agenda abstract in your packet that offers a comparison of both bids over several categories. After thorough analysis of each proposal, my recommendation is to award Thompson, Price, Scott, Adams and Company, a firm out of Whiteville, North Carolina, for these services since they presented the best responsive bid. Their estimate to perform the audit for Person County for fiscal year ending 2022 is $74,000. This offer is $1,030 less than the second auditor's bid and is proposed to remain level for reporting years 2023 and 2024. Over the 3-year period, the total cost savings obtained from approval of this bid is $26,340. Besides the fact that they provided the most competitive bid, their vast experience with county audits further supports my recommendation. Unless you have any questions, I would ask that you approve the audit firm's 3-year proposal and approve execution of the first year's contract for reporting year 2022.
We're open for questions. None.
Move to approve the Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams and execute the first year contract.
Have a motion on the floor. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
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 Thank
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Good luck. Item number 9 on the agenda is lead for North Carolina Fellow fiscal year 23 funding request. Ms. Kathy.
Hello again. So we submitted an application to the UNC School of Government to be considered as a host site for a Lead for North Carolina Fellow. This program places recent college graduates from colleges throughout the state of North Carolina, not just from UNC Chapel Hill, in local governments. And the program provides many different areas of support for these students and provides a stipend so that the cost to us as a county government is relatively low for a full-time equivalent position. This project, this program is aimed at providing opportunities for recent college graduates to work for local government. So helping develop that talent pipeline for local government, and also concentrating their efforts on rural communities, which may not be the first places that recent college graduates look for these types of opportunities. So being able to create meaningful projects for them to work on and adequate level of funding for us as an organization to support them. So we had, as part of our application, just brainstorm a variety of different projects that they could work on, and those are included in your agenda packet. The total cost to host a fellow is approximately $54,000 for a year. This gives them a living stipend, health insurance, other benefits, training. They get 3 graduate credit hours for participating in this program. They also receive ongoing training. What this program is asking Person County to commit is $20,000 towards this total expense. So the fellow would work for us in the capacity of a contract employee beginning in August of 2022 and work for a year. So the county manager was going to include this in her recommended budget, but since they are asking us to go ahead and commit to being a host site now so that they can begin recruitment for the fellows and include this as an option for fellows to consider, we wanted to go ahead and let the board know that we have this opportunity and find out if the board is in favor of committing that $20,000 in the next fiscal year towards hosting a fellow here in Person County.
Can you speak just briefly, where would this person be housed? Is it going to be a virtual job?
No, they will live in the community.
They'll be in the community.
Yes, they'll receive a housing stipend to cover their living expenses.
And that's in addition to this 20,000?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
That's right. So
yes.
The living stipend is about approximately 33,000 that they receive through the program. The county share for the full cost is 20,000.
Okay.
So
okay,
we're paying a little less than half to host one of these.
So now, who's that person report to, and what are you expected outcomes?
Right. So we will have a designated staff person who will provide day-to-day supervision and support for this particular employee or for the fellow. I can do that. We've talked amongst ourselves that they would likely report to the county manager's office. Some of the projects that we had brainstormed do focus on broadband. I mean, it's providing support for a variety of different departments though, so they can get exposure to different areas of local government. But there's potential projects in emergency services, working on a digital inclusion plan with the county manager's office. A Citizens Academy is something that's come up in the past, is something we might want to look at doing. They could support economic development efforts, work with HR to update policies and procedures, implement NeoGov. We've talked about tracking organizational performance measures. So that could be a project that they could work on for us. So there's just a variety of different things, support public information strategy and efforts in the new fiscal year. So we think that there are a number of different projects that they could work on, which would be good experience for them and also a benefit to the organization.
So those directives would come from
our office.
Okay.
Are you talking about all of these options or just
Mhm.
some of these options?
Well-
Because it sounds like you'd need 10 people for part-time work.
you
I'm
are
like,
right.
there's not a clear focus as to what this person would be doing.
So they are going out and seeking these students. So what I had indicated in the application are we have all these ideas for potential projects. We don't have a dearth of projects that we could offer a fellow to help us work on. So it kind of depends on what that fellow's interest is and what their skill sets are as far as what they may be best suited to working with us on and what are our pressing needs at that time as well.
Well, I still think the pressing need is an information officer for the county. We need, and I just think that the focus of someone having, to get us up and running would be helpful.
And we are looking at that as an additional FTE in the new budget. So this person could work with them if that position were approved or,
I would want to specify the areas which they focus on. That'd be an area of focus for personally for me, because I think it's very important for the county to have that. We don't have that capability and it's draining resources from our department heads.
Further questions of Catherine? Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion that we approve the addition of 20,000 to the administrative department's contracted service line item FY23 to fund the LFNC.
Okay, motion's on the floor. Further discussion?
Is this a 1-year stint?
It is a 1-year stint. The program stipulates that the agreement could be extended for an additional year if the county and the fellow were to agree to that.
That would be at the same 20,000.
I don't know that that's for certain, but I think that's a possibility.
But it's only we're only committing for a year.
That's right. We're committing for 1 year.
Okay, that's right.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 10 on the agenda is appointments to the PATS Transportation Advisory Board and the Planning Board. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I'm here to present interested citizen applications for current vacancies on the following boards for your nomination to appoint as deemed appropriate. First, we have the PATS Transportation Advisory Board. We had 2 openings for designated representatives, one for the Emergency Operations Center Director and one also as a representative of Social Services. We have had 2 applications come in. Our new Director of Emergency Services, Thomas Swallenberg, has requested appointment as the EOC Director, and Rosaba Cruz has requested appointment from the Social Services Department. Also, as you're considering this, I just wanted to update you that last fall, you added a seat to that roster to include a representative from the city of Roxborough as they were undergoing an election. They did not appoint anyone to the PATS tab board until February 8th, and Councilman Tim Chandler has now serving in that capacity. But before you today are the 2 applications for appointment, Thomas Swallenberg as well as Rosabelle Cruz as the representatives as the EOC Director and Social Services Representative respectively. What would the board like to do for this nomination and appointment?
I would like to nominate Rosalie Cruz as the appointee.
Well, there's 2 seats.
There's 2 seats. Okay, it says 1 position's available. That's why I'm saying just 1. There's 2.
No, there's 1 available for each designation.
Okay, all right.
So there is a seat available for the EOC Director as well as 1 for
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to approve both.
Okay, perfect.
We have a motion on the floor. Any other nominations? Any change? Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried.
All right, next we're going to look at the planning board. We do have 1 position available for an unexpired term to June 30th, 2024. You had 2 applications received. Cynthia Lynch has requested appointment as well as Ms. Keisha Davis has requested appointment. One note, as you saw in the application from Cynthia Lynch, she currently serves on the Board of Adjustment. But if you see that as an issue from serving on both of those land use committees, she is willing to resign her seat on the Board of Adjustment, basically because they do not meet as frequently. And she is here to speak to that if you desire questions, but I present to you those two questions for the unexpired term to June 30th, 2024.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like motion to Keisha Davis to this appointment.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a
Yes.
substitute motion.
yes, please, go ahead.
Ms. Cynthia Lynch, based on the applications of both candidates, Ms. Lynch has experience in municipal planning. She has served on multiple boards in other jurisdictions. She's got the most experience when it comes to planning and ordinances. So I would like to put forth Cynthia Lynch's name as the appointee.
Okay, Mr. Attorney, did we go in reverse order there?
Mr. Chairman, when the board has done this before, you voted serially and you voted first on the first suggestion, or the first nomination on the day.
Didn't pass. We've done it both ways. Just want to make sure everything's okay with you. Okay, so
One question.
yes, sir.
Is a conflict of interest. I know that one candidate stated that they would resign if they did not. Is it a conflict to be on the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Board?
As Chairman and Commissioners, I don't see that as any inherent conflict. The boards do different things. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi judicial body. Here's applications, variances, ordinance interpretations. It's just a matter of how you all feel about the policy of sharing around appointments or taking advantage of people who are willing to contribute their time to serve on more than one board.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, then the first nomination was for Cynthia Lynch. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Is that
I was aye.
aye? Aye and aye. All opposed?
No.
No. So we have 2 and 2. Did you vote?
My response was in favor.
Of Ms. Lynch?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we have a 3-2 vote. Okay.
Thank you. So that will appoint Ms. Cynthia Lynch to the planning board for the interim or unexpired term, I should say. And just one other note I thought I'd mention, we do not have anyone applying for the Animal Services Advisory Board, but I wanted to update the board that the city of Roxborough also appointed their councilwoman Shayna Outlaw to serve on the Animal Services Advisory Committee on behalf of the city. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you very much. Item number 11, Impact Loan Program, Commissioner Gentry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think it came to light to me when Manager York brought to our attention that there had been a freedom of, or a FOIA request or a public information request on pivot loans that happened in Person County here back in 2020. So I began to look at this and I had some questions as to exactly how, I understand the function, how the loans worked, but I'd like to know whose brainchild this was. How did it come to be? Whose suggestion was this pivot loan program? How did it originate in this county?
I'm not totally sure who came up with the idea. We saw lots of communities offering these sort of programs. The funding did come through the economic development budget. And so I know Sherry had some involvement in that. But as we talked about this, we could bring the item back to your April 4th meeting.
I don't need to bring it back.
I'm not sure whose initial idea it was.
Okay, well, the The problem or the question that I have is that this was under an emergency order signed by then Chairman Jeffers, under emergency order, which also included the details about firearms and whatnot. And then there was a second amendment to that included pivot loans. And so it authorized this one document adjustment on April 7th, authorized $276,000 from the Catalyst Fund to go into a pivot loan program fund that was going to be administered by CAR-TAR. And there was supposed to be a panel of people who were approving the loans. My understanding is these loans were with interest to be paid back. And if they did also receive PPP money, they had to repay these loans. Now, according to CAR-TAR, Person County was the only county in the CAR-TAR that actually took advantage of these loan programs. But what I find troubling is that there was no record that I could find either on the videos of the county commissioner meetings or in any of the minutes where the board talked about this, that the board talked about moving $276,000 of county money over to loan out to private businesses. And I'm not saying they did anything illegal, but I just think it's astonishing that it wasn't talked about. You were here in 2020 when Jeffers, and this was just done like in the dark. Who knew that the county was lending money for private businesses under an emergency order?
That money came from Golden Leaf, didn't it?
Right. It was not actually county dollars. It was housed in the Economic Catalyst Fund, but it is actually Golden Leaf money that was
they approved that you could use for the
right.
loans.
We had to go through that board to get approval to use these funds. So it's not local tax dollars. This was restricted funds through Golden Leaf. We had already satisfied the use of those funds. So these were left over. And this was one of the approved ways that those funds could
Apparently, according to the CAR-TAR, we didn't need Golden Leaf's approval to use these funds. It was the money, it was the county's money at that point in time that was given to lease equipment, I think, was it for Eaton or I can't remember.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is then, if these companies receive PPP funds, they were to repay the money to the county. There's only been 7 people that took advantage of these loans and 1 paid back in full. Apparently, from what I can tell, most all of them received PPP loans. And what I find really amazing is like 3 or 4 out of the 7 have been, their corporations have been dissolved. They don't even exist now. And I don't know what the requirements were to get a loan. What's going to happen if they don't get paid back, and what happened to the rest of the money that wasn't used? Did that get put back in the Catalyst Fund? Where are those funds?
This is why we would like to bring the people who administer the program to the board to answer these questions. There was a panel that was set up that decided which companies would be awarded the funds. And so Diane Cox, the president of the COG, administered this program, and she's more than happy to come talk about the outcomes, talk about the results, and where
they
that
managed the
stands.
fund, but they didn't approve the loans. There was a committee.
Right,
that
it was a
approved the loans.
panel. Right, it was a panel, and we can bring those folks back as well.
Yeah, I
if
think
you'd
that
like.
it concerns me to see something like this where the Board of Commissioners didn't even have a conversation about it. It was just on a consent agenda. It was approved. There was no conversation. And I just think that's an outrageous thing to do for something like this. So I'm just really concerned that happened in that manner, and the fact that these loans are outstanding, where the funds put back in, we should know that.
Happy to get those answers for you, as I've mentioned.
And that was an independent panel.
It was. It didn't have.
Right.
Right. It was just the authorization to develop such a program with the COG.
And it didn't include county staff.
It did not.
Okay. And I understand your point, see your point, but I think we were, yes.
Couple of comments. Obviously, I have the advantage of not having been the county attorney at the time, so I was not involved. But I've seen the documents that are in your agenda package. the declaration that was signed, the declaration of emergency by the then chairman. I gather that it was done under the emergency management statutes and the power that those statutes, considerable authority that those statutes provide to the chair of a body, your chairman, in the case of a county, or a mayor, to some extent, of a city. I haven't looked back at any opinion that might have been rendered by the county attorney at the time. Haven't talked to the former county attorney, as you all know is a friend of mine and who you know is an excellent lawyer. I'm willing to bet that the matter at the time was carefully considered, and that the opinion, apart from policy, whether it should be done, should not be done, but the legal opinion probably was that adequate authority was provided by those emergency management statutes. Now, what I do know is something about the administration of the program and the repayments of the loans, because I have been consulted about twice, I think, about delinquent payments. And I know that the Council of Government organization has been working on securing repayment of the loans. And at least once, maybe twice, I have sent demand letters asking for payments, principal and interest when due. But I don't know the status of those loans.
So we could get that additional information.
Sure, we'll bring this back at the April 4th meeting and have answers to those questions.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Chairman's report, I have none at this time. Manager York.
I just wanted to clarify that the emergency order that was mentioned during the public comment was rescinded on March 14th. That is no longer in place. Thank you.
Commissioner Sims.
No comment.
Commissioner Palmer.
Yes, I've made it a mental note now that I want to commend our county employees each meeting that we have. Did a little math this morning. If we give them all, and I mentioned this when this subject was brought up several meetings ago, I would love to give them all a gift card for something somewhere. We talked about raises, but just a card, a thank you card with a $25 gift card in it times 400 people, you're less than $1,000. I think we can afford to do this. That's just my thoughts and recommendation. But I want these people out here to know that Charlie Palmer supports you 100%. I appreciate all that you do for this county. I know most of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gentry.
No report at this time.
Commissioner Puryear.
No report.
Thank you. So moving along to the addition of an item on the agendas for closed session, which would be now number 1, the motion to enter into closed session per General Statute 143-318.11A4 to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries and other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on the tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations with the following individuals permitted to attend: County Attorney Ellis Hankins, County Manager Heidi York, Clerk to the Board Brenda Reeves, and Economic Development Director Sherry Wilborn. Have a motion to go into closed session.
So move.
Motion to go into closed session. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none, motion carried. Take about
Mr.
5
Chairman,
minutes.
in the interest of time, I know we ran a little bit long. Can we proceed straight into the closed session, please?
As soon as IT gets us.
What was your question?
Can we proceed straight to?
Oh.